The best of Money Matters. The Big Story.
Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Hongbin Jeong. Budget airline Jetstar Asia will cease operations on July 31st as part of a broader strategic overhaul by its parent company, Australia's national carrier Qantas. Now, once seen as a strategic foothold for Qantas Group in the region, Jetstar Asia's closure signals a recalibration of priorities amid rising operational costs, intense competition, and shifting post-pandemic travel dynamics. With over 500 jobs affected and 13 aircraft being repatriated to Australia and New Zealand, the ripple effects will be felt well beyond Singapore. What does this closure really tell us, though, about the state of the airline industry in 2025? And for Singapore, how significant is it to lose a home-based low-cost carrier? Well, joining us today to share more is Shukor Yusof, who is the founder of Endau Analytics. Shukor, welcome to the show.
Hi, Holden.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Shukor, Jetstar has been operating out of Singapore for over 2 decades, and now it is set to close its doors at the end of July. Why is Jetstar Asia shutting down after more than 20 years? Why now?
Well, for the very simple reason that it's been unable to make money for the large part of the 21 years that it's existed in Singapore. So it's been profitable, it claims, for 6 years out of the 21 years it's been here since 2004. So that alone, I think, is a good enough reason to shut down, I think. I am surprised it hasn't been done earlier on.
Oh, really? Well, I mean, it's expected to post a 35 million Australian dollar underlying operating loss this financial year. How significant is this loss in the aviation industry, Shukor?
Any loss of money for an airline is significant because it's a very brutal industry. And when you're looking at Australian 35 million, that money alone can be used for other meaningful purposes for the Qantas Airways Group, for example, the parent company. And so consistently losing money is no longer an option. It is hugely significant also for the bottom line of the airline. And so overall, I think this is the right decision that it's made.
Okay. Well, Jetstar has cited rising costs like airport fees, aviation charges, and supplier charges as major factors. In fact, Group CEO Vanessa Hudson said the company has seen some supplier costs rise by up to 200%, materially changing its cost base. Can you help us break down how these costs have changed in recent years, and why are they becoming such a strain on low-cost carriers like Jetstar Asia?
Like everything else, life changed after COVID. And the same can be said for the airline industry. Post-COVID, everything changed. Prices changed, the mindset changed, the culture of doing business changed, So all sorts of things needed to be reset and realigned. And so the higher cost, because the cost of money became a lot more higher than what it was pre-COVID. And so when you're talking about jet fuel, you're talking about aircraft leases, components, and other various supply chain issues that the airline industry is relying on. And then the costs ultimately piled up. And there comes a point when you're not making money, but then you have to continuously sustain an airline that's not doing meaningful business somewhere far from the HQ. So that's where we are right now.
Right. Well, on that point about supplier costs rising by 200%, is this typical across the region? Are full-flight service carriers affected the same way?
I think it varies from region to region. It varies from country from market to market. But generally, yes, it can be as high as 200%, depending on the kind of component, the kind of stuff that you're importing. And don't forget, we're in an age where tariffs are the game right now. And so I suspect this is largely to do with anticipating difficulties arising out of tariffs coming into the marketplace. I mean, we don't know exactly what percentage that the Australians might have to deal with, but tariffs are not going to go away in this administration in the U.S.
Right. I mean, Jetstar Asia operated close to 180 weekly flights out of Changi and moved more than 2 million passengers in 2024 alone. How disruptive is this going to be for Changi Airport and travelers in the short term?
Unfortunately, it's not going to be devastating for Changi. We know is a world-class airport. It's one of the top 3 airports in the world for the last 10, 15 years. at least. And so Jetstar Asia operates very minimal sums of flights out of the entire operations with Changi. I think less than 5% of flights that are operated by Jetstar Asia. So it's not going to be detrimental to us. It's not going to damage Changi's reputation. And so the only disruption is for the passengers that have been caught by all this. Those who have bought tickets, those who have found that their flights have been cancelled or retimed. So this disruption is there. But otherwise, I think Changi Airport in itself will not see a major disruption to operations there.
Right. I mean, it is definitely unfortunate for travelers who had planned ahead of time, right, with Jetstar Asia. Now, Shukor, there's often talk about the low-cost model being the future of air travel, especially here in Asia. Yet we have a budget airline like Jetstar citing rising costs and unsustainable pressure. So is the low-cost model under threat overall? I mean, are other low-cost carriers also under similar pressures?
Again, post-COVID, there is no such thing, in my view, as a low-cost carrier because it's, by definition, flying is expensive, even if you're flying on a discount airline, because if you take into account the extras you have to pay for a seat, the extras you have to pay for your luggage, and maybe in future the extra you have to pay to go to the lavatory, then it all adds up. And so there's no longer, a fare where you can... Previously, 20, 25 years ago, you can fly from Singapore to Bangkok for the price of a hamburger, but no longer. I think that it's changed considerably, significantly, and today the gap between a full-service carrier and a low-cost carrier is not that much. So it's all down to little differences in products on board as well as the service that's being offered.
Right. I mean, there are all these underlying costs to pay extra for food, pay extra for seats. But, Shukor, what are the regulatory or brand risks of closing a long-standing regional operation like this?
Well, I think Jetstar Asia was never really a major brand to begin with, and based out of Singapore. It was a part of Qantas Airways. It is still a part of Qantas Airways. That is a very strong marketing brand, obviously. But then as a low-cost carrier, it's competing with AirAsia in Malaysia, which is the first low-cost airline in the region. And subsequently, we have airlines like LCCs like Cebu Pacific, like Lion Air, and Vietjet in Vietnam, which is doing incredibly well. So it found itself, Jetstar Asia did, against all this competition. And then it realized, maybe we ought to do something different. But that aside, I think it's very difficult to compete in an area where you are not very familiar with the market.
Well, speaking of competition here, how significant is Jetstar Asia's shutdown to the competitive landscape in Southeast Asian aviation?
It is significant in the sense that they fly to interesting tourist destinations like Bali, like Phuket. But I suspect this will all be mopped up by carriers like AirAsia, like the Lion Air Group in Indonesia. So there's no danger to these destinations not being filled up. There will be an immediate vacuum with the departure of Jetstar Asia, but it's going to be quickly filled up by the other LCCs in the region.
Could regional low-cost competition from, say, AirAsia and Scoot also have contributed to Jetstar Asia's decline?
I'm not sure if AirAsia contributed to Jetstar Asia's decline, but Scoot certainly did. I think Scoot is one LCC or discount carrier that has done incredibly well since it was restructured and redesigned and realigned to be with the SIA Group. And it's done creative, new, imaginative way of air travel. And that has unsettled quite a number of the competition in the region. So Scoot is flying to Europe. Scoot is using different kinds of aircraft. It's got Airbus. It's got the Boeing Dreamliner. It's also now got Embraer regional aircraft, which it flies to Malacca from Changi. Who would have imagined, that you can fly maybe half an hour hop from Changi to Malacca. So they've done incredibly well in that sense, trying different things and just ruffling feathers in the marketplace. So Scoot, I would say, have a lot to do with the Jetstar Asia decline, but that's just one out of many factors.
Okay. Well, Shukor, we also understand that the aircraft from Jetstar Asia's fleet will be redeployed across Qantas operations in Australia and New Zealand. What does this suggest about Qantas' broader business strategy? Is this a retreat from Asia in favor of strengthening their trans-Tasman markets?
Qantas was never really a strong carrier in Asia, in Southeast Asia, shall we say. So this idea of bringing all these 13 aircraft back from Jetstar Asia into Oceania, into Australia and New Zealand makes a lot of sense because that's where the market is. That's where they're very strong in. And I think they will be able to deploy those aircraft. Australia is a huge, huge country. And with a very strong market, they're able to get good yields out of that. So I think that's a good thing to do. So I think they will likely very much succeed in that area. And so it's the right thing.
Well, back home, over 500 workers in Singapore will be affected by the closure alone. What do we know about the support Jetstar Asia and Qantas is providing to them? Is it enough?
Well, we know only from what we've read in the media, and I think it's a sad thing whenever someone's being laid off, especially those with families. So I guess, things can always be more than what is already being offered, but we don't know because airlines are not obliged to give more than what they're supposed to give, for example. And so they're under considerable strain financially as well. So hopefully there'll be sufficient amounts of financial resources that they can give to the 500 workers, and perhaps even the local authority can help in finding new options or new work for these 500 workers, because that's quite a lot of people, and if you multiply, there is a multiplier effect when there are families involved. So we hope that they will be assisted.
Well, we've also heard that the Singapore Manual and Mercantile Workers Union has been involved. How effective has the union's role been in ensuring fair retrenchment benefits?
I think there's a limit to what unions can do within, the constraint of the regulatory environment here. There's a law very much in place that looks after the benefits of workers when things like this happen. And Singapore has been very clear about that. The Manpower Ministry, I'm sure, is looking into this and try to minimize the damage or, the suffering that's going to be faced by these workers. So I think, as I said, we sympathize with these workers and their families as well. But at the same time, also the airline need to be allowed to be able to breathe again. So there has to be a balance between the two.
Definitely. Well, Jetstar's closure also comes after Changi Airport in recent months raised charges for airlines and passengers to fund a 3 billion Sing dollar facility upgrade. So, Shukor, does Jetstar Asia's case illustrate a tipping point for low-cost carriers in high-cost hubs like Singapore? Could we see more budget airlines following suit and closing operations here?
I don't think we'll see other budget airlines closing in the near future, not that I know of anyway. But having said that, Singapore Changi is one of the best airports in the world. There is a price to pay for that, obviously, because of the facilities that it offers, because of the seamless and ease from which passengers can travel in and out of the airport. But it doesn't mean that low-cost carriers do not have a place at Changi. Changi is Terminal 4, which is pretty much designed for budget carriers. Even Cathay Pacific and Korean Air flies there. So I don't see that as, something negative for Changi. Changi has had to up the fees and the levies and the charges because operating costs have gone up. Right. So there are no other way to get around that. So I think this is just the reality of the business.
Well, overall, does Jetstar Asia's exit open strategic opportunities for other carriers, or will it contract overall connectivity in the region?
I think there will be opportunities for other existing budget carriers or even other legacy airlines. But for sure, I think the incumbents that are based at Changi, i.e. Scoot and Singapore Airlines, will look at it and see how they can best exploit the exit of Jetstar Asia and see what else they can do. And I'm sure they will be focusing very, 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 very strongly on their strengths, being part of the SIA group, and where it has the opportunity or the chance to open up new destinations intra-Asia. So that, I think, would be difficult for other carriers like AirAsia or Cebu Pacific or Lion Air, because this is based in Singapore. So money talks, and Scoot and the SIA group certainly is very, very solvent, and they have the very deep pockets, so they can best handle this situation.
All right. Well, then, Shukor, would there be a possibility where Jetstar Asia reopens its wings again?
I suspect not. I think this is a big, huge, very painful lesson that they have just experienced for the past 20, 21 years. And I think they will want to quickly forget about this and get on with their lives down under.
All right. Well, before we let you go here, Shukor, what's your outlook on the budget travel segment? Will it be able to bounce back stronger?
My outlook, not just on budget travel, but on travel, air travel generally, is that we're going to see a few more bumps, minor ones, if not major ones, depending on how things pick up in the next few months. It's all down to geopolitics and all these games that are being played in Washington and other parts of the Western world.
All right. Well, some great insights from you there. Thank you so much, Shukor, for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was Shukor Yusof, who is the founder of Endau Analytics. This has been The Big Story with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.